Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek here with Figured Out Baseball. We've got another Figured Out Baseball podcast today, and we're lucky enough today to be joined by Bo Robinson. Bo is an assistant coach at UNC Charlotte, a Division I school, obviously in Charlotte, North Carolina. They are in a team in Conference USA, a team that's really been doing some good things the last couple of years. Really excited to talk about things with Bo. He's got a great background. He's been a lot of places, seen a lot of things, and I'm really excited to get his take on a lot of things here today in this podcast. But before we get into it, I want to give you a quick background on Bo, let you know who he is and kind of where he's come from. Bo is a Charlotte, North Carolina native originally. He went to South Mecklenburg High School there. He played collegiately at UNC Charlotte from 1995 to 1998. In 1995, he was voted a freshman All-American. He became the only player in UNC history to drive in more than 100 runs in a season as a senior in 1998. A couple of the things happened that season as well. In 1998, Charlotte went to the NCAA Regional as an at-large team. At that time, only 48 teams went, so that's a pretty good feat to accomplish there. The team finished the season in 1998 with a 43-19 record. In 1998, Bo set the school record with 106 hits, also set a school record with 32 doubles. He was voted a first-team All-American that season. At the end of his career, he became the career leader at UNC Charlotte in doubles, RBIs, and total bases. He is second all-time in hits, third all-time in runs scored and home runs. He's one of only 5 UNC Charlotte players to ever win the league batting title when he hit .424 in 1998. That was when Charlotte was in Conference USA. They got out of Conference USA for a while, but they were in Conference USA at that time. In 1998, Bo became a 28th round draft pick by the Seattle Mariners. He was the Mariners minor league player of the year in 1999 when he won the Midwest League batting title, hitting .329. That year, he also drove in 102 runs, scored 101 runs, and walked 108 times. Pretty unbelievable statistics. The following year, he was a California League All-Star. That was in 2000. He hit .313 that year, drove in 97 runs. In his minor league career, Bo made it all the way to AAA with the Yankees organization. He played minor league baseball until 2005. The next year, 2006, he began coaching with the On Deck O's, which is a really well-known travel organization around in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was with On Deck from 2006 till 2012. In 2013, he began his college coaching career. He got hired as the volunteer assistant coach at UNC Charlotte, his alma mater. He was elevated to full-time assistant in 2015. By that time, he was the hitting coach and infield coach. In 2016, Bo's team hit .294. The team improved in literally every offensive category from the year before. Give you just a couple highlights there. In 55 games, the team scored 105 more runs than the year before. They hit 37 more doubles and 34 more home runs in 55 games than they did the year before. His 2016 team set the school record with a .971 fielding percentage. They had 4 players on the all-conference team that year, including a first baseman who was voted the best first baseman in the region by Rawlings and ABCA. In 2017, Coach Robinson was promoted to recruiting coordinator. That year, his team hit over 300. The team finished with a 34-24 record. That was their first winning season since rejoining the Conference USA in 2014. That year, they set the school record with a .978 fielding percentage, which was top 20 in the nation. They had 3 hitters drafted that year, 1 guy drafted in the 3rd round, 1 in the 9th, and 1 in the 28th round. Their offense improved for the 3rd straight year in runs, hits, doubles, triples, and home runs. They had 6 all-conference players in 2017. Then last year in 2018, Charlotte, for the 3rd straight season, was the toughest team to strike out in Conference USA. They finished with a 34-24 record for the 2nd straight season. They had 5 more players selected to the all-conference team. They had a 12th round pick, a hitter who was a 12th round pick that year. Coach Robinson, we really appreciate you being here today. Obviously, there's a lot going on your bio, so I'm just excited to jump into this stuff with you. So just appreciate your time here this evening.
Man, I appreciate you saying all those nice things. They're good glory days back then.
It's good to relive the glory days, isn't it? Especially when somebody else will do it for you.
That's right. That's right. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be on here.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of jump right into things. I like to kind of usually start out with things that kind of jump out from your bio. And, just from what I see, you've done a lot of things that a lot of people haven't done. You've got a great perspective just from, the fact that you were a really good Division I player, obviously a really good pro player for a long time. And then you had an opportunity to coach at a really good travel organization, and you started coaching there, ended up coaching in college. So you've been everywhere as a player. You've been kind of a little bit everywhere as a coach. Really, Bo, I guess my first question is, you've been really loyal to UNC Charlotte through all this time. What's Charlotte got going for it that, obviously besides you being there, what draws you to stay there and just continue to make that program better since you've spent all that time there as a player and now as a coach?
No doubt about it. I'll say this. One thing that's always been special to me is the fact I'm born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up on the south side of Charlotte, went to South Neck High School. At that point in time, when I was in high school, I had a lot of guys that were local players that I looked up to that ended up committing to UNC Charlotte. And at that point in time, I mean, that was the thing to do, and everybody wanted to stick together and play together because Legion ball was a big deal back then, and it was kind of each Legion ball team would obviously form relationships and bonds because we continued to play against each other in town. And what ended up happening was the better players all decided they all wanted to go to UNC Charlotte. So that was what was really cool at that point in time was playing with a lot of your friends. And the second part of it too was obviously I wanted my family to see me play quite a bit. So it was definitely an easy choice for me to go to UNC Charlotte. I had friends there, had a chance for my family to come see me play. My dad actually played professional baseball, so it was good to stick around here and let him continue to help me out with certain things and whatnot. But the other big draw was Coach Hibbs. At that point in time, he was a fairly new coach. He was a young coach that just came from Wichita State. He got the head coaching job at UNC Charlotte, and he was one of the first people that came out there to recruit me, and he sold me on the fact that he was going to continue to keep building that program and make it into one of the powerhouses here in the Southeast. And obviously he's still there now. I get a chance to actually coach with him now, but it gives me cool perspective in the fact that he was my coach, and now I get a chance to work for him. So I know what the program looks like. I know how he is as a person. Unbelievable person, unbelievable in the way that he has treated me and given me the opportunity to coach at the college level, which has been pretty neat. Obviously my background kind of started in coaching really at On Deck Baseball Academy, and that's kind of where Mike Schilt and I kind of ran that program for several years before he ended up selling it to the Hill family, the Jason Hill family, which is another teammate of mine at UNC Charlotte. But just really learning how to teach the core fundamentals of the game. Between my dad, who had a chance to play professionally, like I said, for 7 or 8 years, learning from him, and then getting around Mike Schilt, who was one of my coaches at UNC Charlotte. He was an assistant coach my last 2 years at UNC Charlotte, and just trying to build an academy like we did on the south side of Charlotte. It really helped me become a better coach. At the same time, while I was playing professional baseball, I would go over there and teach in the off season. But a lot of the core principles that I teach at UNC Charlotte, and Coach Hibbs gives me the platform to let me coach and let me be me, and which I'm very appreciative of. But the core fundamentals still come back from what I learned in professional baseball, what I learned from my dad, what I learned from Mike Schilt, and what I learned from all the other coaches I had a chance to play for in professional baseball. I'm trying to relay a lot of that message on to our kids that exist now at Charlotte. And I think we've got a lot of good things going on. I mean, with facilities that we've added, I mean, heck, we just added about an $800,000 or $900,000 indoor facility, which is going to be a game changer for us from a player development standpoint. It enables us to do a lot more things than what we've been able to do in the past. I mean, rain or shine now, or snow for that matter, which we might get an occasional snow here. I mean, it doesn't stop us from being able to get our work in from a player development standpoint. But it's been phenomenal. I mean, we've added a turf infield, which has been great for player development too. We could do several things on that with machines and bunting, and don't tear our field up with TFP. We can get ground balls on the side with machines without tearing up the field. I mean, it's just enabled us to do a lot more things. And heck, we added a brand new bullpen area. We added a brand new wall. So, I mean, I would think we put close to $1.5 million in our stadium in probably about the last 3 or 4 years. So it's going to help us keep up with the Joneses in Conference USA, which is obviously one of the best baseball conferences in the country. But it's been fun. I'm enjoying what I'm doing out here, being around 18 to 22-year-old kids. They keep me young, but it's also just very fun to get out here and pass along the message that I got from a lot of good people that helped me along the way, and now it kind of gives me the platform to give back, so to speak. And it's my hometown, so there's a lot of pride and the fact that I want the city of Charlotte to have a good baseball program here at UNC Charlotte. It's my hometown. I know a lot of people here in this area, and it's just a big-time pride thing for me and making sure that we're doing what's right by the community and making sure we're a winner every single year, year in and out, year out. And that's the biggest part about building a program is you don't want to just have one or two good years and then fall off the map for a couple of years. You want to be a consistent winner by doing things the right way, recruiting the white ray. That way you can continue to just keep reloading. So, but, I mean, that's pretty much it for my side of the coin and just trying to help Coach Hibbs do what he's already started out here and can keep that program going in the right direction and hopefully make us a consistent winner at the top of the charts on Conference USA.
A lot of really great things there and about 10 different directions we can go. First of all, I just want to say that a couple of people that he was mentioning there, Lauren Hibbs is the current head coach at UNC Charlotte. He's been there for a long, long time, has had a tremendously successful career. And Mike Schilt is now the manager for the St. Louis Cardinals. So just a pretty good coaching tree there to work under to get
started. No doubt
started.
about it. I was very fortunate and lucky to be around very good people. There's no doubt about it.
Talking again, there's a lot of different directions we can go there, and I've got a lot of notes. I basically have enough from that first answer that I think we can probably take up the next 45 minutes, Bo. But the first thing I want to ask you about is just building a winner. This is something that I take a great deal of interest in. You know, what it takes to build a winner and how different programs do that. So in your case, you know, at UNC Charlotte, the first couple of years back in Conference USA were not the easiest, going from the Atlantic 10.
No doubt.
You know, much different level of competition in that conference, especially, you know, the top of the Atlantic 10 is pretty good. The bottom of the Atlantic 10 usually not so much. Whereas Conference USA, every team is pretty good. You know, what do you think, in your opinion, Bo, what are some elements to sustaining success that you've started to build on the last 2 years at UNC Charlotte? What are some of the most important things that you guys need to do to continue to win and build?
No doubt. And I'll say this, my first year that I was a volunteer coach at UNC Charlotte was the last year that we were in the Atlantic 10. So I got a chance to see the Atlantic 10, and then in my second year as a volunteer, I got a chance to see what Conference USA looked like. And that particular year, the second year, which had been my second year, but first year in Conference USA, the biggest difference that I noticed was just the physicality of the game, the arms that you saw on a day-to-day basis. I mean, there was a lot of pro arms. I mean, you would look at every team. I mean, when you consider obviously Rice as a perennial powerhouse, you got the Southern Misses of the world, you got FIU down there in Miami, you got FAU in Boca Raton, even Louisiana Tech, Old Dominion. I mean, all these programs are really established programs. But the biggest thing that they had is they always had really good Friday night, Saturday night arms. And then obviously on Sunday, you get maybe a young guy that's got a chance to be a pro, but it seemed like every Friday and Saturday night you were seeing a pro arm, on the mound. So then, and that, from that standpoint, I mean, you saw better velocity, you saw better breaking balls, you saw harder sliders. And then from a position player standpoint, it seemed like it was a little more athletic. Guys are a little bit more physical. If you make a mistake in the middle of the plate against somebody in Conference USA, it would maybe be a double. It might be a homer now. But the physicality and the speed of the game was the biggest difference that I saw from the Atlantic 10 to Conference USA. But even the Atlantic 10, it's a good baseball league, like you said. From the top teams are always tough to compete against. But when we made that transition to Conference USA, we kind of got our butts kicked a little bit. And at the same time, we're also playing a lot of freshmen. And it's tough for them sometimes because you're trying to obviously bring in good recruits every single year, but there's also a time frame where the guys need time to develop. And when you're forced to throw 3 or 4 or 5 freshmen in the lineup against guys that are established college baseball players that might be juniors and seniors, I mean, you got a tough road to hoe. But I'm really proud of what we did with a lot of those guys, because some of those guys that kind of took some beatings early on in Conference USA ended up having a very successful end of their career in the league. And several of those guys ended up getting drafted. But I know from our standpoint, now that we've been in the league a few years, I mean, we're always looking for good arms. We're always looking for what we call fringe pros, guys that have good arms, have good bodies, obviously have clean arm action, have the chance to continue to develop velocity. If we see a guy that's shooting 90 to 92 when he's in 10th grade, or even 11th grade, we might have a tough chance of getting him, especially if he's polished. But we do go after guys that we look at as fringe pros, where we got a chance to develop their body, have a chance to develop maybe a better breaking ball than what he has. But we're always looking for guys that have the ability to throw strikes, have a good clean arm, obviously the ability to throw maybe a secondary pitch, and hopefully we can continue to develop certain things, because we're trying to get guys that aren't necessarily, if they're already polished and they're already throwing the ball hard and they already got a good power breaking ball, 9 times out of 10 we're probably going to lose that battle against the ACC and the SEC, but we'll still get in the mix with those guys. It's just a tough road to hoe trying to get them. So we got to look for those guys that are fringe pros that we think that we can develop in the pros. And from a position player standpoint, I mean, it's something that's been a staple of our program for a long time. Coach Hibbs is always looking for lean, athletic guys that we can develop, that we can also change their bodies and make them stronger. And here, since we've been in Conference USA for a couple of years, we're trying to build our program somewhat like what a professional baseball organization likes. You always want to be athletic in the middle of the field. I mean, your shortstop, second base, center field. Obviously, you want to have a good defender behind the plate, but at the same time, we want to make sure we got speed and athleticism, but we also want to make sure we got some physicality in the middle of our order. So positions like first base, maybe third base, catcher, or maybe like right field, we want to make sure we got some guys that have a little bit of thump in their bat that can do some damage. So the biggest thing that we've done is just trying to change the makeup of what we're trying to recruit, that fits the mold of what Conference USA and even the ACC and the SEC look like. I mean, heck, we talk about Conference USA, it's always ranked in between maybe the 4th best conference to the 8th best conference in the country. So every single game that you play is always going to be a tough game. I mean, it always is. And heck, our non-conference schedule, I don't know if people have had a chance to see that. We always play a tough, challenging non-conference schedule. I mean, heck, this year we got Clemson home and home. We've got Wake Forest home and home. We got NC State home and home. We've got Kent State coming down here to play us. And we pretty much do that every single year. We're going to go play at Arkansas for 2 games. So the reason that we do that is make sure that we've got a tough strength of schedule, so we have a chance to increase our RPI, which gives us a better opportunity of possibly getting an at-large bid. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do, but first and foremost, I know if you recruit well, you end up becoming a better coach.
That's for sure. So the non-conference schedule, you know, you said you do that for just to help increase your RPI, you know, for a potential at-large bid. But how much do you think that also, like playing in a tough road environment, especially on a weekend, if you get a chance to play a weekend series somewhere, how much do you think that also, I mean, is part of that just like preparing your guys? Because if you get a chance to go to a regional, you know, chances are you're going to be going on the road, have to play in a pretty serious environment somewhere else. Is that a part of it as well?
There's no doubt about that. We try to put ourselves in situations that's going to help our young guys develop and see what they're going to see. I mean, you can talk about it as much as you want, but until they get the environment when they're playing at Arkansas, when they're playing in front of 10 or 12,000 people that are bearing down their neck and hecklers down the right field line, hecklers down the left field line. I mean, you got to get them in that environment to let them experience that, because I think that's going to help their development and their growth, and learning how to play in tough environments. And the goal for us every single year, obviously, is to win our league and win our conference tournament, but it's to get to postseason play. And when you get into postseason play, you want to make sure you get there, that you've seen everything that you need to see from an arm standpoint. We don't want to be surprised when we see a guy that's going 94, 95, 96, 97 miles an hour even. But you also don't want to freak out with certain guys that have never been in a tough environment in front of big crowds. So we put our guys in that realm so they can actually learn how to relax and calm themselves down and play the game that they're used to playing, and not let the elements and the other things affect them.
That's a big deal, you know, when those guys have been there before and it's not the first time they played in that type of environment. Are there other things that you guys do in practice that you think prepares your players to win maybe better than some other schools do? Is there something in particular in practice that you really like as like a foundation, a fundamental foundation for your program?
Well, I'll say this. I mean, I know our practices are very tough. I know our fall. I mean, most people, they don't know much about what goes on in the fall. They see all the games in the spring, but our fall is always a challenge. I mean, between getting our guys up in the morning at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, getting them up to go lift weights and then obviously go to class and having to deal with the time management standpoint. But when we get out to practice, I mean, we're getting after those guys. I mean, we're hammering home and harping on fundamentals. If guys make a mistake, we're a little bit more patient at the beginning, but when we start getting into the end of the fall, we've addressed certain issues over time. We'll make sure that we let those guys know, and because the adjustments have to be made, because the more mistakes that you make in the fall, I mean, they're going to carry over into spring. So you want to try to clean things up as much as possible in the fall. That way you don't have any issues whenever the lights come on and you're playing at Arkansas, because you already practice that in a lot of ways. I mean, whether it's getting your blunt technique down, or whether it's getting your hit and run down, or whether it's playing what we call 27 outs. I mean, we do that on a regular basis in our practice where we're trying to play clean baseball. You can't give teams extra outs, so we try to put pressure on our team and kind of create some pressure on them a little bit, where we basically knock out 27 plays and we got to go 27 plays without making an error. And if they make an error, then we start back at zero again. So we try to create certain situations in practice to where it's going to put a little bit of pressure onto our guys. And also, when we play our inter-squad games, I mean, if one of our guys makes a mistake, we'll actually slow the inter-squad game down to actually teach off of that. I think that's very important, because you can teach, and you can take BP all you want, you can take fungo all you want, but until a certain situation comes up in a game, I think this is a game of failure, but the more that you fail, sometimes you learn from it, which is going to help you out in the long run where you don't make that same mistake twice. But no, that's the practice part for us is huge. I mean, we're very big into player development. I mean, we're not just bringing in 20 guys a year in recruiting process and just, if you can't play, then kicking them out and this, that, and another, which I know has been an issue, probably here within the last 5 to 10 years. We want to recruit the guys that we want to develop, and we want to make sure we spend a lot of time with them. We are patient, at times to where we know that they're going to make mistakes, but we got to give them a chance to make the mistakes, to actually learn from it. But that's kind of been a staple of our program, but we really get in there and we really teach and harp on fundamentals, which is how I grew up, which is the way Coach Hibbs was when I played for him, just making sure we're playing clean defense, obviously working quick and throwing strikes. And that's obviously a staple of a good winning program. When you can pitch and play defense, as much as I am a hitting guy, I mean, I love offense, don't get me wrong, but I know you got to have pitching and defense to win. So we put a lot of stock into that, and just playing good, clean baseball. But our inter squads in the fall, they're huge for us. I mean, we get so much accomplished. I know the NCAA regulates us on time, but we try to use that time as wisely as we can to try to get as much out of it as we can. But that's huge for us.
It's just interesting to hear you say that. Just as you said, I mean, you're one of the best offensive players to ever play at UNC Charlotte. Your teams there have gotten better pretty much every year offensively. So obviously, you were a good hitter, you're a great hitting coach, but still, the pitching and defense to you is kind of where it's at. I do want to talk about your hitting philosophy though, and just kind of get an idea just what you're teaching your guys. There's a lot of stuff out there, and like you and I talked before we started recording this about just kind of why figured out baseball exists, and a lot of it is just because I think there's a lot of bad information out there, and I thought it would be really beneficial for young players and even young coaches that want to learn to have a platform where they could trust where the information was coming from, and you're not always going to agree with everything, but at least trust that you've got a pretty good source that you're hearing it from, and that you have a chance to consider some other thoughts, some other schools of thought. So just, from your perspective as a really successful hitter, really successful hitting coach, can you kind of sum up what your overall hitting and offensive philosophy is there at UNC Charlotte as a coach? Sure.
Well, the big thing, I know that all the principles that I try to use, that they're always going to work off the basic fundamentals. I mean, like I said before, my dad had a chance to play professionally. He was a good position player, actually played third base and caught some. And then obviously I had a chance to be around Mike Schilt, and obviously Coach Hibbs when I was at UNC Charlotte. Mike Schilt was our hitting coach at that point in time. But I've had a lot of good instruction along the way, and I know that hitting's kind of evolved a little bit over probably about the last 5 to 10 years, which is fine. I mean, that's good for the game. But everything that I teach off of is going to be, it's off of core fundamentals, and certain things. And I'm one of those guys, I'll be honest with you. I say it all the time to our guys that we're out at practice. I mean, I had a lot of good hitting coaches when I was in professional baseball, but the best ones I had were the ones that kept it simple. I know there's a lot of information, there's a lot of data that's out there, but the core fundamentals to me will never change as long as the game's being played. I mean, I'm real big on having an athletic stance. I don't care if a guy's narrow. I don't care if he's upright. I don't care if he's wider. I don't care if he has an open stance. I don't care if his hands start high. I don't care if his hands start back. I mean, there's a lot of different things, and there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. But to me, I want to make sure that the player, first and foremost, is comfortable, and he has to be athletic. So I'm not a guy that's a big cloner. I'm not going to make everybody hit a certain way. I'm not going to make them all stand a certain way. They're not going to all hold the bat a certain way. I mean, you're going to see 9 guys in our lineup this year. They're probably going to have 9 different stances. But the core of all that is I want to make sure that their weight's on the balls of their feet and they're in an athletic position to do athletic movement. I'm also a guy that, I mean, obviously you have to load. I mean, to generate any kind of power, you have to get your weight loaded back, and then you got to get it back on your backside, and what we talked about, get your weight into your back hip, to try to generate, some power. As you're doing that, it's kind of in rhythm. We talked about the rubber band effect and making sure you get your hands back into a good hitting position. So all that kind of goes in sync. I'm real big in having rhythm. You don't have good hitters, that are out there. I mean, they're not going to be standing there like a trophy in their stance. There's going to always be some type of looseness and some rhythm into their swing. So when guys get loaded back, and to me, they can do a leg kick, they can do a toe tap, they can do a traditional, just get loaded back. I'm not a guy that clones. I want to give those guys some freedom, and I also want to give those guys some say into what they do with their swings. I know I've run across some hitting coaches in the past, and this is kind of their own thing. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with it at all, but they make all their guys do it the exact same way. And I know I would have issues with that. There's certain things that I did well that other guys probably wouldn't do well, and vice versa. So I try to keep things very simple and very fundamental and try to give them some freedom. And at the same time, I also talk to those guys a lot about finding your 2 or 3 different keys, whether it's making sure you're getting loaded back a little bit earlier, you're getting loaded back late, or whether you're pulling your front side off, make sure you're staying closed, whether you're getting a little bit heavy out on your front side, make sure you stay soft. I don't go too crazy with getting real analytical about certain things, because I want to make sure that we're getting to good fundamental positions to do the most damage. I mean, obviously you got to get your foot down on time. I mean, nobody hits with their stride foot up in the air. You got to make sure you get your foot down into a good hitting position before you can actually start your swing. But as we go through, I mean, I know I talk about it all the time. To me, the biggest thing with being a hitter is, first of all, knowing who you are. And I talk about that with our guys all the time. I mean, if you're a speed guy that does not have a whole lot of power, but your biggest tool is speed, what good is it going to do for you to hit a lot of lazy fly balls in the air? Where I know our outfield last year, we had a 6'5" runner in center field. I know we had a 6'7" runner in left field, and at times we had a 6'5" runner in right field. We had a very athletic outfield last year. But anybody that did not have a whole lot of pop, whether it be in the Conference USA or some of the non-conference games we're playing, those guys are going to go get it. I mean, they could really get after the ball. They could really run. They can cover a lot of ground. So unless you hit basically the ball off the wall or over the fence, it was pretty much going to get called. So I'm a guy that, if you're a speed guy, be good at being a speed guy. Be a good bunter. Make sure you're hitting those line drives. And if you miss hard on the ground, what I don't want those guys doing is hitting a lot of lazy fly balls. That's not going to do anything good for them, and it's not going to put any pressure on the defense at all. But at the same time, I'm also, I mean, if you're a guy that, I mean, which I play with several guys in professional baseball that have plus pro power, I mean, you don't want those guys hitting low line drives and hitting hard ground balls. You want those guys doing damage. I mean, you want those guys hitting a lot of doubles, hitting a lot of homers, and the best way to do that is obviously make sure your bat stays in the zone a long time. We talk about keeping your bat on plane with the ball. That way you can maybe hit more balls on the line and maybe more balls in the air. I give them the freedom. If you got plus power in our program, I don't mind you living in the air a little bit. So, I mean, I'm kind of saying 2 contradictory things, but it goes back to what I'm all about, is be good at being you. But most people, to be honest with you, I mean, I think most people in college baseball, I mean, we watch the big leagues now, and you see 1 through 9 in the lineup, and all 9 of those guys can leave the yard and have plus pro power. Well, that's not real in college. If it was, they'd all be playing professional baseball. So what we have to do from a college baseball standpoint is to me is be able to adapt to the hitter as a coach. If you got a guy that's a speed guy, let him be the speed guy. If you got your middle of the order guy that's got plus pro pop, let him have plus pro pop. But to me, the majority of all college hitters are guys that are pretty much doubles guys for the most part. So with those guys, I try to keep them obviously staying in the middle of the field with their approach, but I want them working gap to gap and trying to be a complete hitter, when I say complete hitter, I want it all, to be honest with you. I want them to hit for high average. I think high average comes from having a lot of barrels. If you have a lot of barrels, which is the most important thing for me when I go out and recruit it, I don't care if a kid went 0 for 4 or 4 for 4. I'm counting your barrels, and I want our guys to all be really good hitters first and foremost. And basically I always say that the power will come if you continue to have a lot of barrels. So, those guys staying in the middle of the field, using, basically left center to right center field, trying to cut balls in half. Obviously the goal is for all of us to try to hit line drives. I mean, I know the new age and talking about launch angle and this, that, and another, which I agree with. I mean, launch angle is basically just a measurement. I mean, what we're trying to accomplish nowadays is trying to hit line drives. I don't think that's anything new or different than what it was in the past. It's just now we have the data to give us what the actual launch angles are. But I go back to, if you got a speed guy, you want him to have probably a lower launch angle. If you got a doubles guy or just a guy that's got maybe doubles power, you want him to have, I don't know what the launch angle may be, maybe 10 to 20 degrees, whatever it may be, whatever the line drive over shortstop, second baseman's head in the gaps, whatever that is. That's where you want to be. And if you got one guy, I know we got a left-handed hitter by the name of Rafi Vasquez who has plus pro power. I mean, he can hit the ball off the top of the hitter's eye. He can go oppo. He can go pull side. We're allowing him the freedom to be a little bit more uphill because he's shown the ability to hit that way, and he's shown the ability to be able to drive balls out of the ballpark. So I don't want to take that basically tool that he has away from him. So we're going to allow him to be him. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I do that might be maybe a little bit different is I work with our guys. I give them some flexibility and some freedom to actually allow them to be themselves, but also help them. If I see something that's going on with their swing, I'm obviously going to be there to help them out every single day. But the big thing is I want them to be really good at being them. I don't want to clone them. I don't want them to everybody to hit a certain way. I want us to have a really good lineup, 1 through 9, that has athletic guys in there, that has obviously really good hitters top to bottom. We want to have some physicality in our lineup. We want to be a complete offense that has good plate discipline. Obviously, we want to be on time to fastball. Everything that we do works off of the fastball. There are times that we can sit on off speed when the game dictates that. But the biggest thing, I want our guys to be good hitters first, and the power numbers will be there. So there's really no other way that I can talk on the hitting side of things other than just basically just hammering home the fundamentals, making sure your barrel stays in the zone for a long time, make sure you've got good head discipline, make sure you've got good balance, make sure you're staying in between your feet, and just things like that is kind of what I'm all about. I'm huge on routines, something I learned early on with my dad. Obviously I got a chance to work with Mike Schultz, which we had routines at UNC Charlotte, but the big thing is I got a chance to see Albert Pujols, the Ken Griffey Jr.'s, the A-Rods, when I was playing professional baseball. When I was a minor leaguer, I was in awe of those guys and how they worked in the cages and how they prepared themselves for the game. It was pretty remarkable just watching those guys do what they do and how consistent they were, which has kind of led me into being obviously a hitting coach, and something I have a true passion for is really having good routines. And they're not all the same for our guys. All of our guys have talked to me. We all have different routines. We have a different tee routine for certain guys. We're obviously working top and the bottom of the zone. We're working outside and inside, making sure we're hitting balls correctly to all fields. We're trying to hit everything hard on the line. Obviously there's a front toss part of it. We're working on location. We have hack attack machine that we use where we turn it up to 90 miles an hour. Obviously we're taking BP. We take situational rounds. There's a lot of things that we do on a day-to-day basis that is part of our routine. But each and every one of our guys in our program has a little bit different routine that we've talked about that will help them be consistent. And to me, good hitters show up every day with the same swing, same approach. We know we're going to get the same guy every single day that we can rely on. And to me, that's what becomes a good team offense. is knowing that 1 through 9, you got guys that understand their swings, that always have good approaches. They obviously had a good game plan from us watching video and tape of college pitchers that we're going to see on a day-to-day basis because we have access to video and all that stuff like that. But the biggest thing is just making sure they are prepared the right way. So when they get in the game, it's just see ball and hit ball and have a good approach. So we work so hard on the cages and all of our routines to make sure our swing stays clean and tight. And that way it has the ability to make adjustments, not only in the at-bat, but in the game and all that good stuff like that. It's obviously game adjustments, but to me, it's how you prepare. You got to prepare the right way to have success.
Bo, this is awesome, man. I'm here taking notes like I'm 23 years old again. This is great. I got like 25 questions to ask. I got like 25 questions to ask you based on that last answer. There's so many, just so much good stuff, man. I guess where do I want to go with this? You talk about individuals, and as a coach, it's your job just to, figure out who these guys are and kind of let each guy be himself and be the best version of himself. How much resistance, if any, do you get from guys? Like, do you get guys sometimes that are, maybe they don't have the power that you want yet to be able to start driving the ball to the ballpark, but they want to lift the ball too much, or the opposite, a guy that doesn't really realize how powerful he is? How do you have those conversations with guys? Does it take some time usually to talk them in, to kind of convince them who they are?
Well, I'll say this is something that I think that Coach Hibbs does an outstanding job with this, and we got this in professional baseball. I actually talked to him about it when I first came on board, and I know he's been doing it for several years even before I got here, but the philosophy that they had when I was with the Seattle Mariners my first year was they kind of drafted us, and then we went off to go play short season out of college. They let us play, and they basically wanted to see what they drafted, what are his strengths, what are his weaknesses, and this, that, and another. And then what they would do is, as we got about a month into the season, they would start making some corrections. But they wanted to see what we could do first, what we had success with, what we didn't have success with. And then at the end of the short season, they would all send the prospects over what they called instructional league. And instructional league is something where they take some of the top prospects, they take them down to their spring training site, which is, I guess probably, I think it's in like October, is when it is now. And they work on the things that the guys struggle with. And that's similar to what we do with our fall. We have like a 10-day window where we don't actually say anything to our guys from an offensive standpoint. Now, I know the first day that we get out there to work out, I see a lot of things that I might not particularly like, but I also want to see if they can do it. So I kind of give them an opportunity to be themselves first and foremost. And then as you start to kind of get into it a little bit, I know the biggest thing that we use on a regular basis, especially early on, is we get a hack attack machine and we turn that thing up to about 90 to 92. And I want to be honest with you, it's probably the best coach that you will ever find. Because you can sit over there in the dugout and watch certain guys hit off the hack attack, and they're just getting their butts handed to them a little bit. And you're like, listen, fellas, we're going to see fastballs. They're every bit of this good. So there's certain things that we need to do and clean up so we can get to the point where we can make pretty consistent contact off on a good firm fastball. I mean, to me, the whole game revolves around, especially from an offensive standpoint, is can you handle a firm fastball? And then nowadays with the arms as good as they're getting, heck, there's guys in college that are throwing 90 miles an hour now. It's pretty easy. Hell, they're getting to mid-90s and upper 90s now, and we're seeing that in Conference USA. Rice is going to have possibly 2 first-rounders in their weekend rotation this year. So, we got to do things that's going to prepare us to see those guys because we want to try to still have success against them, and that's the goal. So we kind of go through a phase in the fall where we kind of allow them to be them a little bit. And what you'll be surprised is a lot of those kids, when they struggle, they come to you to say, Coach, what are you seeing? And then it kind of opens the door to kind of have that dialogue with the kid to actually get in there and really help them. And then when you start helping them, then they start to see some adjustments that are being made. They're starting to have a little bit more success. It's amazing how you can build the trust with those guys. Obviously, there is a routine and there's a method behind the madness of what we're doing. But I think it's important for us as coaches to also give the kids some freedom to actually do what they do, and if it doesn't work for them, then they will reach out to you as coaches. And the other part of it, too, heck, we obviously, as a recruiters, we all love our guys. Sometimes it's tough love. I mean, I have 2 kids right now, and sometimes I got to give them a little bit of tough love. But that first week to 10 days that we have with those guys, we get them out there on the machine. They can obviously do their stuff and hit off the tee and all that stuff like that. But until they see what a 90-mile-an-hour plus fastball looks like, it's amazing how it kind of opens up their eyes to the level of play that they're going to see at the next level. And to me, the high school jump to the college jump is a bigger jump than college going to pro, in my opinion. The reason it is, I think, is because you got a 17 or 18-year-old kid coming into college, and all of a sudden he's facing a 22-year-old senior. To me, that's a big jump for a high school kid to make, and the speed and the physicality of the games is so much different. It takes a little bit of time for those guys to get used to the speed of the game. Heck, when you're in college and you're playing in Conference USA and you're playing the non-conference schedule that we're playing, and all of a sudden you jump into professional baseball, I mean, you're used to playing with Woodback. You're playing a college summer league. The jump is still a big jump, don't get me wrong, but it's not as earth-shattering to make that jump because you're used to seeing good arms all the time in the league that we're playing in. But there are times, I mean, there are a little bit of resistance, but the cool thing about it is we allow that process to kind of take shape. And I feel like I've got a pretty good rapport with all of my guys, and we all talk about maybe the 2 or 3 different keys for each and every guy, and that's stuff that we focus on. We don't talk about 10 or 12 different things. We talk about 2 or 3. And to me, I think the kids actually appreciate that because we're in a time now where there's a lot of information out, and good gracious, I mean, if you're thinking about your elbow being at a 47.4 degree angle, your front foot being here, your hip being here, your shoulder being here, and I got to have my fingers this way, I got to have my knob here. I mean, to me, you got to develop all that stuff through fundamentals on a day-to-day basis, but you don't have time to think about 12 things when a 94-mile-an-hour fastball is coming in there. You got to train your body to do certain movements the right way, and to me, it's the core fundamentals of what all good hitters do, with some freedom. I mean, I give our guys a little bit of freedom to let them be themselves.
So you talked about what you're doing physically with your guys, the kind of fundamentals that you're talking about there, but you also have mentioned, just the approach that you want guys to have in an at bat. Would you mind just talking to us about that a little bit? Just what you tell your hitters. When we talk about approach, for people that maybe don't hear that term very much, the approach basically means like, what's your plan when you're going to the plate? Is there something in particular that you talk about? Obviously every hitter's going to be a little bit different based on, again, whether they're a power guy, whether they're, a slappy guy that can run or whatever it may be.
Yep.
But what do you tell your hitters? How do you teach them to be the type of hitter that's not thinking about their mechanics in the box? They're thinking about some of the things, like you just said, see ball, hit ball. Like, what's the conversation like with your hitters overall? Just for a young hitter that's listening to this, obviously you can't take the physical cues into your bat. You can't be thinking about your hands, your hips, your feet, whatever in the batter's box. What do you talk about with your hitters that they should be thinking about when they're in the box?
That's a great question because to me the mechanics are huge, but to me the approach is a lot of it too. I mean, and obviously mentality is a lot of it, but we talk about approach every single day. I mean, you can have perfect mechanics, but if your approach is bad, you're not going to be a good hitter. And I know our approach every single day is first and foremost. I mean, we have access to watching all our games on TV, Conference USA TV, and obviously the ACC network, FCC network. So anybody that we're playing, we're able to get video of those guys. So first and foremost, we want to make sure we're watching film and see what most pitchers' tendencies are. And we kind of go about it that way. I mean, we also have a pre-game meeting about the guy that we're going to face and what we've seen on tape already, so they're not shocked on what they see when they get out there. I mean, for the most part, I mean, the game is played. I will say this, probably college level, I would say it's probably 80% is probably played on the outer part of the plate, which obviously the better the pitchers that you have, especially the weekend starters that you're going to see, they're all going to have good arms, but for the most part, the better ones have the ability to locate a fastball. So you want to make sure your approach, for me, I mean, it doesn't really change a whole lot other than the fact that we are trying to obviously hunt fastball early in the game possibly. But we're looking for certain pitches that we're going to sit on. And obviously working off the fastball being the main priority. And we're looking to try to drive a baseball right back through the middle field. When our guys are going up there, I tell them, listen, I don't want you thinking about right field line all the way to the left field line. I want you to kind of pick out a target on the pitcher that you're going after. And obviously, if you're a speed guy, your target might be a little bit lower on the pitcher. If you're a doubles guy, it might be a little bit higher. If you're a power guy, it might be a little bit higher than that. But the big thing is what we're trying to do is have a visual target staying back through the middle of the field. And to me, if you stay in the middle of the field, it's a lot easier to stay in the middle and react to an inside pitch than it is to think, pull, and then try to react and go the other way. To me, you have to stay centered to be a good hitter, and I think that's been a staple. Heck, as long as I've been a kid, my dad hammering that home to me nonstop. And obviously, the same thing I heard from Mike Schilt when I got there. Same thing I heard from the pro guys when I got to pro ball was first things first. To be a good hitter and to be a complete hitter, you have to stay in the middle of the field. Obviously, looking maybe middle to the outer third of the plate, staying in the middle field, and then obviously if they get a fastball middle to middle end, you got to react to it. But the big thing is trying to eliminate holes. I do not want, from an offensive standpoint, and I hammer it all the time on our guys, I do not want you to have holes. I mean, I think we think of it in terms of 9 quadrants. I mean, I don't want them to have a hole in the top of the zone. I don't want them to have a hole in the bottom of the zone. I don't want them to have a hole away, and I don't want them to have a hole in that these pitchers, because they're watching film on us. When they're doing scouting reports on us, I don't want our guys to have certain pitches or certain locations where they know that they can go to the well one after another, and just completely keep getting us out the same thing over and over again. I hammer home to those guys on eliminating holes. And that's one of those things I think I take a lot of pride in it, because obviously I was a hitter that when we're facing a pitcher, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I know that baseball is a team sport, so to speak, but it doesn't get any more mano-a-mano between pitcher and hitter than that. So you need to make sure you go up there with a good plan. You got to know if he can throw a secondary pitch for a strike. If a guy doesn't throw a secondary pitch for a strike, to me, those guys are fairly easy. You can just go up there and sit fastball and just lay off the other stuff because you know he can't throw it for a strike. But you got to know who you're facing. You got to have a good approach through the middle of the field. Obviously, we talked about it before. We're always thinking about working gap to gap, hard on the line. And also having the flexibility. If you got a guy that can really freaking locate you, you better make sure you look at that part of the plate. I categorize guys as high pitch ability guys, and also categorize those guys as guys that are just trying to throw strikes. If you got a guy that's just trying to throw strikes, I mean, you're probably going to look outer third to inner third, maybe the middle part of the plate. But if you got a guy that can really, really, really locate, you might have to take one half of the plate away from him. So that's kind of how we do things. I mean, that's kind of a staple for what we are. But I think there's so many things that encompass being a good hitter. Obviously, mechanics being a good bit of it, but you got to have a good approach. And the biggest thing for me is good hitters know they can hit. I mean, I think mentality is probably the most important thing to being a good hitter, is knowing that when you walk up to the plate, whether you're 0 for your last 6 or you're 4 for your last 4, you look the same. I call it the walk. I know I look for the walk. I talk about walking from the on-deck circle to the plate. I'm watching hitters when they do that. To me, when I go out and recruit, I'm watching how guys walk from the on-deck circle to the plate. You can see guys that got the confidence and the swagger that know that they can hit a little bit, but you can also see, and just reading body language, which is what we do. And I know, Jeff, you were a college recruiter before. Body language is like a walking billboard. We want our guys to walk up there and obviously set the tone for the at-bat. It's our plate. I mean, we're trying to dictate that it's our plate. We're going to take our time and make sure we get in there and be able to execute what we've worked our tails off trying to do.
How do you talk to guys that are maybe struggling a little bit, and maybe guys in your own team who, in the midst of some struggles, maybe don't have the body language that you want, whether they're on the mound or they're hitters? What's the conversation you're having with the guys to help them get that back?
Well, that's something that especially that we deal with a lot of new guys that maybe come into the program initially, because when you're a high school kid, that you're used to being the guy on your high school team, and all of a sudden you're 18 years old and you're with 22-year-old seniors that have already established and whatnot. Is trying to continue to keep building their confidence all the time. Obviously, as a coach, I think that's very important, and getting them to understand the big picture. I mean, we got a couple guys now that are really, really super talented freshmen that I'm I can't wait to see where they end up here in 4 years. But they beat themselves up, and they're beating themselves up because they care. And I think that at some point in time, I mean, I think that's good because you know that it bothers them, and you know that it affects them. But I'll tell them all the time, like, listen, you can't let people see that. You got to understand the process. We're in the fall. We're in a teaching element, which to me the fall is a big time teaching time, whether it be a catcher, or a hitter or an infielder or whatever it may be. There's going to always be some struggles when guys come from high school to the next level because it's a big jump. But the big thing is continue to encourage them in a positive manner. But at the same time, whenever they start doing it too much, it's good that they care, but at the same time, you got to make sure that you have that big body language, walk around and have confidence in your ability that you're going to be a good player. And we got a couple of them now that they beat themselves up. I like it because it shows that they really care, but also they're such great kids that you want them to do well. You got to say, look, pick your head up, pick your chin up, stick your chest out, and we can go out there and keep working on what we're telling you about. We've got time to clean certain things up. We're in the fall. There's a method behind the madness. We're trying to get you guys ready for February 15th, which is going to come up for us here in a couple of weeks. But I tell those guys, especially the new freshmen that come in, when we get to the spring, you're no longer a freshman anymore. We expect you to carry yourself like a big-time college player. We expect you to carry yourself like you're going to be a guy that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think that is huge in the way you carry yourself and just being a confident ball player altogether. If you notice, and heck, all the superstars that are out there, I just got done watching Tom Brady just do his thing last night. I mean, it's unbelievable how good that guy is. And I'm sending our guys tweets and just saying, look at how he carries himself. I mean, just pure confidence all the time. Confident players end up being good players. So it's a constant battle with that because baseball is a game of failure. As we all know, especially being a hitter, you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're still considered good. So it's a constant battle of trying to make sure that when they carry themselves, they're going to carry themselves like they're pro. I call it being a pro. Carry yourself the right way. Walk around with a little piss and vinegar is what I call it sometimes. So I don't know if I can say that on the podcast, but you got to know you're good. You got to know you're good. So.
Easier said than done sometimes, but you know, having good coaches that believe in you, I think, goes a long way to that. A couple more questions, Bo. Then I'll let you go. I know that you've already spent a good bit of time here, but there's so much I still think to talk about. The first thing I just want to ask you is about just working on players' weaknesses. You said that you don't want your guys to have really any holes in their swing, and obviously 3 years in a row, your team's been the toughest team to strike out in the conference. How much time are you spending working on guys' weaknesses as opposed to, continuing to build their strengths?
I'll say this. I mean, when you're talking about, we do work very hard on weaknesses, but we have certain guys. I mean, I say it all the time. I mean, if they're a pull guy, I want them to stay a pull guy. I mean, if their strength is middle to middle end, I don't ever want them to lose what their strength is. But at the same time, as you start getting around the college game and the coaches start to know you and the more film that they see on you, you better correct your weaknesses, because if you struggle with a fastball away, you're probably not going to get that pitch that you like so good that's middle to middle end. And then vice versa. And we got certain guys that are really good on pitches away from them, and they struggle to get to the inside pitch. What I always tell them is I want to work hard always on keeping our strengths. But at the same time, if we need to spend extra time in trying to eliminate that hole, let's do it. But the big thing is trying to be good at all of them. That is the ultimate goal. I mean, everybody's got their hot zone. Some guys like the ball up a little bit more. Some guys might like the ball down a little bit more. Some might like it in a little bit more. Well, I still want that to be their honey hole. But at the same time, let's try to make more of a hot zone with a lot more of the pitches than what you had when you first got here. So, and I think that goes back to having a good approach, a good plan, and really having a good routine, because that's part of what I talk to those guys about. Like, here, this is, if I had to pitch to you, if I was an opposing team, this is how I would pitch you. So you got to understand that eventually these good college coaches that are out there are going to be able to make that adjustment to you. So now you need to make the adjustment back to them. And that's part of the routine. I mean, sometimes I'll do high T with certain guys that are struggling with the pitch up in the zone, and there's other times where I'll do low T with guys that are not staying in their legs and in their base. Make sure they're staying in their legs on the low pitch. Obviously move tees in and out. I mean, we do front toss in and out, but a staple of our program is using a hack attack machine. And and obviously working outside pitches with the attack machine, working inside pitches, working breaking balls. If guys struggle on breaking balls. So, I mean, whatever we need to do to continue to make the strengths and keep them the strengths we do, but we also work really hard on what they might struggle with a little bit. And the other part of the question I think you asked is two-strike hitting. I mean, to me, I think that's important. I know that in this day and age where there's a lot of home runs and there's a lot of strikeouts, I think I talked to Mike Schild about this over the winter break. He said this is the first time, I think, in Major League history that there was more strikeouts than hits in a season, which I was just blown away by that. And I'm still one of those, I guess, I don't know if you call it old school, whatever it may be. I mean, I'm not that old. I'm 43 years old. I think that when you strike out, you put zero pressure on the defense and you make it really easy on the pitcher. And from our standpoint, and it goes back to mentality and how you carry yourself. To me, two-strike hitting is a completely different at-bat. I try to get our guys to maybe step out, clear all the negativity that obviously has happened for you to get the two strikes. I mean, obviously, you either fouled off a good pitch to hit or an umpire hosed you on a call 4 inches off the plate. Something negative has happened for you to get the two strikes. There's an element where I think that the kids have to clear their head, get into a good two-strike approach, whether it's choking up on the bat, whether it's spreading out a little bit or sitting down in your legs a little bit more. But the big thing is competing with two strikes, because I don't want to say it's unacceptable in our program. Obviously, we're going to have guys that are going to strike out as part of the game, but I want to make it really tough on the pitcher to where we have to get him to throw more pitches than what he needs to do to eventually get into the pen. Obviously, two-strike hitting is important when you got man on third and less than 2 outs. I'll say that. That's probably my biggest pet peeve out of all of them, is when we have a man on third and less than 2 outs and we end up strike out looking, or we strike out swinging at a breaking ball in the dirt or something like that. To me, that's unacceptable, because that's all you got to do is put a ball in play for the most part, and you can get an RBI to score a run. I think that there's an element to the way that we do things that our kids know that two-strike hitting is very important to us as a staff, but it's also an important piece of our puzzle for our offense, and trying to make it as difficult as we can on the opposing pitcher. It's going to happen. I mean, we got one kid that, actually probably got 2 kids that might strike out a little bit this year, but those are guys that have plus pro power that I've talked about before. I'm going to be a little bit more forgiving with those guys because they're going to reward us in other areas. But our guys that can run and don't have a whole lot of pop or whatnot, I mean, it's unacceptable for those guys to strike out a lot. We're trying to obviously use what their skill set is, which is maybe their speed, to try to put pressure and keep pressure on the opposing pitcher and the defenses. So two-strike hitting is obviously a staple, and we work on it quite a bit. Whether it be our first round of BP, we'll do stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we're trying to put balls in play and cause havoc on the defense, trying to put pressure on the defense.
I appreciate hearing that. Just, I think that the way that the pro game is right now, that's the pro game, and it's not always how, college baseball, high school baseball should be taught, should be played. And, it's good to see, I just, personally, I guess your philosophy is a bit like mine, and that's not why, I don't bring guys on the podcast that have the same philosophy as me, but I appreciate when guys appreciate things that I do, I guess, like anybody would. Yep. And, I like hearing about that. I got one more question for you just about, yep, again, thinking about young players, high school players that might be listening to this, or parents of high school players, high school coaches. I've seen some things on social media that bother me a little bit about, just young players being taught to hit everything in the air. And I'm talking like middle schoolers, little league players being taught to hit everything in the air. And I've actually, yep, seen conversations, go on between coaches on social media just about like, well, that kid's not going to have success like that. Well, we're going to try to teach this kid, that's how Major League MVPs hit. So we're going to teach this kid to hit that way because, when this 13-year-old gets to be 17, 18 years old, those fly balls are going to be home runs. And to me, that doesn't sit right with me personally. So I just want to ask you, if you are speaking specifically to those young players that are listening, there's coaches of young players that are listening, how would you, and you've been here because you've coached the high school players, you've coached you've been at the high school travel level. How are you teaching those players to hit? Is it the same thing, or are you teaching them individually, or is it, how would you teach a young guy just to go about that?
Yeah, sure. And I know that that's the $1 million question that everybody asks. You're either on one side of the fence or the other. And to be honest, I don't really want to get caught up in that. But really the big thing that I think the young hitters I did lessons at that academy, good gracious, thousands and thousands of lessons I did over about 10 or 15 years that I was there. It's just really hammering home like fundamentals. I mean, get into a good athletic stance. Make sure your feet are straight, shoulder width apart. Make sure you got the bat in your fingers. Make sure you've got a little knee flex in there. I mean, I think the important thing for the younger kids to learn, and that's going between 8 years old and then maybe even 14 years old with those kids. I mean, my kid's 14 years old that I have now, and he's in middle school, and I'm basically hammering home with him just fundamentals. Give me some fundamentals and give me some bat speed every day where you can continue to keep training, doing things correctly, but training yourself to be as quick as you can be with the bat. It's almost like long tossing and doing this stuff now. You want to train your arm to be, if you want to throw hard, you got to throw hard. If you want to have bat speed, you got to swing with quickness every single swing. But the big thing is, and the whole argument, I guess, nowadays is, do you want to hit the ball in the air or hit the ball on the ground? I don't think there's any hitting coach that's out there that is trying to teach a kid to hit every ball on the ground. And I don't think there's a hitting coach out there that's trying to teach every kid to hit a ball straight up in the air either. At the end of the day, I mean, I guess the launch angle and the measurement of the launch angle is, to me, the goal for everybody is to try to hit a ball in the air on the line. And I guess certain people have different philosophies. They want it to be a little bit higher. Some guys want it to be a lower. But at the end of the day, I think first and foremost, I used to talk about this in pro ball, and my last game that I played pro ball was 13 years ago. But I know that they first taught us, we want you first to be a good hitter, and the power will come. And as the power comes and your body changes and your body evolves, you're going to end up hitting for more power because you're going to have more bat speed, you're going to have more strength. You're going to have more mass behind it because guys are going to get bigger and stronger, and they're going to gain weight, especially at their adolescent ages. I mean, but the big thing is they got to understand, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is you got to understand once you start getting into high school, especially your freshman or maybe even sophomore year at college, you are what you are. I mean, the man upstairs gave you a certain body type. He gave you certain attributes. Obviously, if you're playing at the college level, you can do certain things really well. But to me, I still think it goes back to learning the fundamentals in an early age, learning how to do things in an explosive manner, but try to be a good hitter first and foremost. The power will come, and there's certain things that we can do from a teaching standpoint where we can help you get more power. But if you can learn the basic fundamentals and get around good baseball people that are teaching you how to use the whole field. I mean, heck, nowadays they got these shifts going on. We do it at the college level, too. I mean, we're putting shifts out there. I mean, if there's holes in certain swings, eventually you're going to get to a point where these pitchers can throw to that hole. So if you can get to the point where you can learn, as early as possible how to put together a good at-bat and how to put together a good routine, how to put together good fundamentals with the swing, I think it's going to help you in the long run because your body and all that stuff is going to develop over time, and you'll end up being what you end up being. Like I said, the man upstairs is going to give you certain attributes that you are as a player, and what you got to do is maximize what he's giving you. And obviously that's where the coaching comes into play. I mean, if we got a guy that's got power, we're going to try to allow him to maximize his power. If we got a guy that's speed, we're going to try to maximize what he can do. I mean, I had a chance to play with Juan Pierre for a couple of years in professional baseball. I mean, he was a guy that could really run, had really good barrel awareness, could really bunt, had no pop whatsoever, probably took some of the ugliest DPs I've ever seen. But that guy ended up having a 14 or 15-year big league career because he maximized what the man upstairs gave him, and he knew how to be successful being him. And I think that's just a huge part of the game that I think sometimes might get overlooked because we want to clone everybody to hit a certain way. I think the fundamentals, the sooner that you can learn the fundamentals and the basic fundamentals, I think the better off for the game and for all the kids that are coming up through the ranks.
And the beauty of those fundamentals that you've gone over and over again is, and that you harp on so much with your own players, that they work for everybody. No matter what kind of player you are, those things are going to work for everybody. And then you get a chance to really kind of, blossom into, like you said, the best player that you can be as an individual, which is something that coaches really should be shooting for, is to, look at the individual and help that individual to be the best player that he can be.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's why we do what we do. And I think it's important for us as coaches. And I obviously I don't have it all figured out. I'm still learning from two of the best guys out there, and Coach Hibbs and Mike Shilton. I talk to him every off season. I talk to Coach Hibbs every day. We meet every day, and we're still trying to even learn more. But at the end of the day, I think the core fundamentals of the game will really never change. I mean, there's going to be different wording. There's going to be different verbiage for certain things, but everybody's still trying to stay on plane with the ball. Everybody's still trying to attack the inside part of the ball. Everybody's trying to get extension through the ball. Everybody's trying to keep that discipline. Everybody's trying to keep balance. Obviously, we're trying to train bat speed. We're trying to train arm strength. I mean, all those things. I mean, the game continues to keep evolving, and you can see it even with the college game. I mean, just the way that these kids and the new training methods with the weight training program, the speed and agility. I mean, there's so much science that's out there. Why not use it? But the big thing is that you can't get overwhelmed with it too, to where you're turning a kid into a robot. You still got to let them be an athlete. You still got to let them play the game. You still got to let them have some freedom to do certain things, to be the athlete that they are, because you can't turn them into robots either. And they got to have the ability to play the game and react to the game. If you're thinking too much about certain things and too many things, it could paralyze you too. So you got to be careful. But some of the data stuff, I love it. I mean, it's been awesome. We're getting ready to add it into our program. I mean, some of this Rapsodo stuff and whatnot. I mean, that's good information, but you got to know how to process the information. You got to know how to process the launch angle stuff, where certain guys can be here, then other guys can be here with the launch angle. You got to be real careful, but I think it's important for us as coaches to be able to translate some of that information so we can use it to help teach. Because a lot of the kids now, they're visual learners. They want to see themselves on tape. They want to see themselves on the video or the iPad or whatnot. So I think it's important for us to continue to keep evolving with the game as well, but also understanding that the fundamentals will never change, but it also could be a huge way to help us teach to the modern kid that's coming up that's used to some of this technology, which I think is a great thing for the game.
Yeah, if you use technology the right way, it can help kind of no matter what your philosophy is. And everybody, this is Bo Robinson that we've got with us today on the podcast. He is the recruiting coordinator, hitting coach at UNC Charlotte in Conference USA. And Bo, it's been great to have you here. I've known you for a long time, and it's been great to catch up with you recently and kind of reconnect with you. So it's been really great to have you here. You make it sound so simple, man. You're getting me fired up. You're getting me fired up to go out and coach some hitters or take some swings myself.
No, I hear you. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate it. I think this is great for the kids. It's great for the game, and maybe I can help a certain way. And I look forward to listening to other podcasts from other coaches that are out there too as well. So we're all out here to continue to learn, but I really do appreciate it. And obviously good luck to you and the people that are out there listening.
I appreciate it very much. Bo Robinson, guys, he's a humble, dynamic guy, great plan for his hitters. Obviously really confident in what he's doing. He's kind of the old new school mix that I really appreciate in a hitting coach and a guy that has been proclaimed by Eddie Hall, who's another one of our guys here that's working with Figured Out Baseball. You've been tabbed as the best hitting coach in the country from Eddie, so I'm just going to throw it out there for everybody to hear.
I don't know about that. There's a lot of good ones that are out there.
Well, easy to hear why a former hitter in your program would appreciate everything you've done, and I just appreciate you being here and look forward to having you involved in Figured Out Baseball any way that we can. I always want to just have good people involved that are, doing things for the right reason, which I think it's really evident that you are. So, Bo, it's been great, man. I appreciate your time very much, and best of luck to you guys this upcoming season.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it, buddy. See you, man.